Welcome to the Digital Nomad Experts podcast by Commute. Today you've got me and Jeff, and we are here to talk about a subject that we are really excited about. But the title today is Success Isn't a Salary. You don't owe your life to a 9 to 5. Now, with this, we want to say, as a digital nomad, you can absolutely make a great salary. You can potentially make more than you make when you are not living as a nomad. But we want to talk about, a lot of times people ask us questions of like, do I need to take a pay cut to be a nomad? Do I need to change my career to live this travel lifestyle? And sometimes you do have to make big changes. And sometimes you do take a salary cut in order to start, right? You might then build yourself back up, but you might take a salary cut or a job change just to choose the freedom to live this lifestyle. And so Jeff and I have been talking a lot about the different values and the different measures of success in life that we have learned along the way, that we witnessed in our nomad friends, and a lot that we continue to discover and unfold as we've progressed in our careers and focused on different success metrics for ourselves over time. So we're going to start by digging into our own stories. Jeff will start and I'll share mine as well, of these big transitions that we took and why, and really just talk through with you our own thought processes. And I've done a lot of coaching with people as well, trying to make this decision of like, is it worth it? Should I make less money? Again, should I change career? Should I leave my family, behind with this comfortable life? Should I sell my house? And what does success mean? And what is success to you? So this, if it sounds like a broad topic, it is a little bit, but there's so many nuances to it. And it's a topic that if you hang in here, I think it can change your life really and truly. And we're really excited to chat about it with you. So, Jeff, any other thoughts before we kick off with your story?
It's such a heavy concept that we're talking about today. And you said it is broad, but I think it's going to be very identifiable to people. Yeah, I'll get into my story, and I think it's probably going to resonate with a lot of people, especially very career-oriented types of people that are listening, which is many of you. I always defined success, like just coming up as a kid, is going through this process of things that you have to do. First was school, and that was beaten into me. You have to be very successful at school, and that meant producing good grades, right? That was your measure. Your measure is you get a 4.0 GPA. That means you're successful. You are a successful student, and parents are going to be proud of you. You should be proud of yourself. Other people are going to be impressed by you. That is who you are as a character, almost. That's your shell. That's who you are as a person that everybody sees, at least in the West. And all of this is just speaking from Western culture, especially the United States, Canada. And then moving on from there, it's which college did you get into? That's kind of your mark of, and I still see that now at 40 years old. Well, I went to Princeton. It's like, get the fuck over it. It's the same textbook that I got in my junior college. I paid $50 a course. Anyway, you get into college. And then after that, it's just programmed into you in our culture as you define yourself by what you do, and how successful you are as a human being is generally associated with your title and how much money you make. And people place so much value in people who do both of those things. They're CEOs, they're chief, whatever, and they make X amount of money, and that's represented in their house, in their car, and everybody just views the quality of that character through that lens, which is insane. Now that you say that out loud, it's so hollow and it's just so superficial. But it's what's beaten into you, and you can see that every day. We talked about this before. When you meet somebody here in the United States, almost always within the first minute, you ask them what they do. You don't ask them, what do you do for fun? You don't ask them what your hobbies are. You don't ask them what their dreams are. You start with, what do you do? Usually that person responds with what they identify themselves with, and that's their job. And if you think about that, just to take a step back very objectively and look at that kind of conversation that's being had, it doesn't make any sense to put all of the, like, how much you actually value human, how much value they give to the world based on the job that they do, 9 to 5, generally for somebody else's dream. And I think we've gotten brainwashed into believing that this is a good thing. I don't know that I want to go down that path of why. I don't want to go super like conspiracy theory type of thing on that one, but I do think that we all feel like that is the right path. Anyways, I felt like that was the path for me. And so I started as an intern, losing money every day, commuting to San Francisco, parking in Chinatown and walking half an hour because it was only $11 to park in Chinatown, and walking down 30 minutes to the office and making, I think it was like $10 a day and losing $40 a day, something like that. And I was like, that's all right, because this is what I'm doing. This is the path. This is the path you're supposed to do. You gotta earn your way up, and you gotta be hungry to be successful. And every day I walk past this restaurant, it was Bob's Steak and Chop House. And I'd go in there. I wouldn't go in there because I knew it wasn't for me, because I'd walk by and see these fancy people in suits. And I looked at the menu one time and it was like $30 breakfast, which is just absolutely insane. Like, how good can you make eggs? I decided one day, when it was the right time, when I was successful enough, when I had the right title, when I was making the right amount of money, I would have earned my spot in that restaurant. And I was going to go in there and I was going to be proud and eat with the rest of the elite people. And years went by, and it's like, I don't know, it's maybe like 8, 9, 10 years or something like that. And then the point came where I became CMO, the highest I could get when I was with you guys in Bolivia. I got promoted, came back to San Francisco, went into San Francisco, walked by there, walked past it, and then turned around and was like, yeah, now's the day. And I went in there, and it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. These people in stuffy suits. I remember distinctly, there was, just imagine like this finance bro that was now like 55 years old and overweight and just kind of pompous. He's very, very out of shape. And he's got this female assistant. And he's just barking orders at her while he's slurping on his coffee and eating his food. And this poor woman's just sitting there taking it. I'm like, this is terrible. And I got my food, and the food was terrible. It was overpriced, and it's just all washed over me that the last 10 years were not a waste, but my direction was a complete waste. And I left that restaurant, and I kind of laughed. Like, I wasn't upset. I wasn't like, oh, I fucked up. I did the last 10 years completely wrong. It was just like, oh, it was just like a veil was lifted. I'm like, okay, I am going to look at the world completely different now. My journey has now changed completely. My path is in a completely new direction, in that what I thought was successful is that guy. That's what I'm going to look at. That's what I'm going to look like in 30 years from now. I'm going to look like that guy, thinking he's the shit, wearing his fancy suit at 7 a.m, barking orders at some poor secretary or assistant or something like that. I was like, that is absolutely miserable, and that's not for me. And that's just kind of like the tip of the iceberg. We're going to talk about a little bit more in detail, a lot more in detail, what all this stuff means. But I mean, that was the moment where everything shifted for me, where I'm like, oh, I'm not valuing the right things, and it's time to completely shift.
I love it. What would you say? And we will get into more detail of this in a few minutes. But if you look at if we look at back to that first question of like, what is success, right? If you could give a couple words to like what you thought it was when you had reached that point or were trying to reach that point, and then after you left that breakfast, maybe you didn't think it in the exact words now, but if you could look back in that moment and think like, as those cogs were turning, like, or even if you look at it today, like, what now do you define as success?
Yeah. And you wanted to use just a couple words, like,
Yeah.
as opposed to, yeah. Okay. So before, I would have said power, hard work. Mm-hmm. Hard work is a big one, especially in my family. Like, the harder you work, the better of a person you are.
It's a lot to unwind. I feel like a lot of us are unwinding that in society these days.
Yeah. And money, prestige, all these things associated together. And I think leaving that restaurant, it would have been more, the word time comes to mind, and how you spend it. Like, time is really the most important thing. So how do you want to spend your time? And the other thing would be energy. Like, where do you want to spend your time and energy? And all of that just leads right into digital nomadism. The whole reason why we do what we do is time and energy. Because I mean, I don't want to be 65 years old and look back and be like, what do I have to be proud of? Is everybody going to remember me for how hard I worked? Nope. Is anybody going to remember me for my job title? Absolutely not. They might remember you for being the asshole in the restaurant, bossing around their assistant. They probably will. But yeah, it's a complete, I can't believe I got to that point without psychedelics, to be honest with you. It's such a huge directional shift as a human being to take without the influence of something a little bit more persuasive.
Just a good old 7 a.m. breakfast with some business suit people. That might be more powerful than psychedelics.
Shrooms and eggs Benedict. No, none of that.
No, that's so good. But it's so helpful to hear. I mean, I know your journey, but for someone listening to hear this journey that you went on. And I think all of us to some extent, when I was younger, you could not have told me otherwise that if you said, salary is less important than this, and I would have like, fuck off. Like, what are you talking about? This is what you do. Like, you go and you
wouldn't have heard.
No, you wouldn't have heard those words. Of the things, like maybe you're, if you're listening and you're in the young years like Jeff and I were when we started this as well, maybe you'll hear this now and it will resonate, and maybe it won't, or maybe you're past where Jeff and I are and you're still learning this. There's no right or wrong time, and it's been a journey, and it's not something I don't know if I could have heard this when I was 22 and graduating college and like on a mission to climb the corporate ladder, because it was so ingrained in me that I thought it was what I was supposed to do. And it took a lot. Like, I'm still unwinding it all. Like, to be honest, like every day it's still like trying to twist back the, like all those lessons that I learned. But it's been a lot through experience, and then through travel, just realizing, being in other cultures and seeing different freedoms and seeing other people, other traveling friends. Even once I started traveling, I was still working so much and really learning from other people who maybe didn't put as much focus on what they did, and they were working to live, not living to work, and vice versa. But anything else before I share my story? Is there anything else that stands out? Do you want to keep going to that kind of second part of your journey before I hop in, or is that a good place?
No, tell your story.
As you were talking about like the power suit, there was a story that came to my mind. So for me, I was very similar to Jeff, of like, get good grades, go to a great school, all the things. And I went to study business in my undergrad, and everybody either studied finance, accounting, consulting, or marketing. And even at that point, I had a little bit of wisdom in me. I'm like proud of myself looking back, and I didn't even realize the choice at the time, but there was a lot of people in my business program. It was a really intense program and like really competitive, and people, we had all these companies that would come onto campus to interview, and all the finance people were going into, investment banking in New York and fighting for these jobs. And I was capable, like I was good at math. I could have gone that path, but I remember hearing stories of people who went and did those jobs, that they would move to New York. They would work like 14 hours a day. They could be called in at 2 a.m, 5 a.m. Like, they had no life. And yet they were like going to live in New York. And I also wanted to move to New York right after college, and I did. But they made probably like twice as much as what anybody else made in, accounting or consulting or marketing and the rest of our business school careers. But they worked probably 5 times as much, and like their health, their life, like they couldn't sleep, they couldn't see friends. And I was wise enough at that moment in my life to say, like, I'm not willing to, even at this age, like, I know I want a good career and I want to climb the corporate ladder and I want to make a lot of money, but like, I don't want to give up my life completely. So I was at least wise enough to sort of know that. And I think as I look at my journey now, it's just realizing more and more, as you said, that like that time, your energy, your health, your experiences, your friendships, your relationships, like all of that to me are more important. And I do believe that money doesn't have to come at the expense of that, but a lot of the traditional ways people think you have to hustle and work harder and work in these certain careers and also sound good, right? It sounds impressive and all of that. So anyway, I went into brand marketing to start, and I worked for PepsiCo in New York. And the reason, one, it was also like a pretty intense work culture. I was commuting an hour and a half each way. So I was living in New York City, and our office was a little bit north of the city. So it was an hour and a half commute almost always in each direction. That's 3 hours of my day. which is like an insane amount of, looking back on that now, I don't know how or why I did that. But at the time it felt, I wanted to work for that big prestigious company and I wanted to live in New York, and I was working with all these celebrities and it was exciting and it was like prestigious and powerful and making, pretty good money. Maybe not compared to the iBankers, but it was like, it felt like the right path. And I was like ready to climb that corporate path. And I remember pretty early on at Pepsi, we had this, it might've even been when I was at right when I first started, it was like all the, the young people right out of college who just started this company. And we were in this boardroom and they had set up, it was like maybe all the new hires, like our class that came in, us and the MBAs. We had this lunch, they call them like meet and greets, with the CEO, who was this really badass Indian woman. Her name is Indranui. And I just remember when she was talking to us, she tells the story that she basically, when she got promoted way back, they had to replace her job with 4 people because she worked so hard. And I believe it, like really smart, hard worker. And as the CEO, she was telling us, I don't remember, I think somebody probably asked her, like, how do you balance, what is your work-life balance like? I don't know what I thought she was going to say, but she basically said, I have 2 children who pretty much hate me and don't speak to me. I sleep 4 hours a night. Like, I almost never see my husband. And I just remember thinking, like, gives me chills now even talking about it. Like there was like screws I'm locking in my head. Like, I don't want to climb this ladder. Like, if that's where I'm going, not that I was going to be the CEO of Pepsi, but even just climbing, like I looked at the VPs and the people 10 years ahead of me even, and they just, I feel like, worked all the time. They would go pick up their kids from school and work from 8 till midnight and then like get up at 7 a.m. And I just remember thinking, like, this doesn't seem good. Like, I don't want that. Like, if this is where I'm going, I don't want that. But I stayed for several years because I didn't quite know how to get out of it. I didn't know what was better. I didn't know another way. I didn't know nomad life existed. A good next step for me was kind of like this middle transition before I started nomading and really found freedom. But my boyfriend at the time took a job out in LA, and I decided to move out there with him. And so Pepsi gave me a remote role that I could do from LA, and I would still go back and forth to the office in New York sometimes every now and then. But suddenly I was like, okay, I'm not commuting 3 hours a day. I have so much more time back in my day. So that was that first step. I was like, I can do my laundry in the middle of the day if I need to. I can go watch the beach, like walk to the beach and watch sunset at night. I can go to the gym at 3:30 p.m. because everybody else is done on the East Coast hours. And it just, like, my quality of life became so much better. So I can talk about still even like the next steps. I think maybe we can both go through that as the next part of this. But to me, it was just kind of suddenly unlocking, like, there's another way. This, like, as Jeff said, like, having time, having energy, being healthy, having time to have experiences, and not just, like, when I was in New York, I would wake up before the sun rose, take a bus or a train to work for an hour and a half, come home after the sun already went down. And so, like, I never saw light. And then I was up until 6 a.m. partying with my friends on weekends because I was 23 and 24, 25, 26 at the time. But it was just like my health, the quality of life, what I was doing, it seems unfathomable to me at this moment that I did that, because my priorities have shifted so much now to the point where now I really value time, freedom to wake up at different times, to travel, to do so much more. So this is the start of it. But yeah, where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, just as you're talking about that Indian woman that was working 3 to 4 hours a day,
just sleeping 3 to 4 hours a day, working all the rest.
Working the remainder. I mean, I can't help but think at this point that's a failure as opposed to success. That's a complete failure. But there's a part of me that still resists that.
Yeah, I guess it depends on your definition of success, though, right? Which is what we're questioning here today, where to her, and to be fair, as she talked, she said these things very matter-of-factly, and she wasn't like, oh my gosh, I hate this. She was like, I chose this. I love this business, and, like, this is what I want to do. So as I look at that, it's not that there is, one right or wrong way to live. Some people are, like, really genuinely love and want that for their lives, or maybe as a musician or a politician, or I don't know, maybe some people do choose career over family and life and travel. But to some people, and I would argue it's a very small percentage, that might be success to them, but to someone like you and I, or maybe if you're listening, it's not. But I want to hear you keep going. But I just want to say to some people, it might be.
I get it to a certain extent. I think beyond that, there's probably something that needs healing in you that you're trying to fill the void with, and then we're in a different topic. We're no longer striving for success. You're striving to perpetually find that thing that you can't achieve in life, whatever traumas you've had. Like that's problematic, and that's I think that's a different thing. Yeah.
And there's so much you'll continue in a second, but there's a great book that it's called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. Have you ever read this? Do you know of it?
No.
But basically there's this woman who's written about a ton about this topic, but she worked in palliative care. I think that's the word is, but basically with people who are on their deathbeds and dying and taking care of people at the end of their lives. And she kind of packaged together the themes that she would hear talking to these people on their deathbed. And one of the first one is usually like, I wish I was more true to myself. The second one is, I wish I hadn't worked so much. So like you said, it might be these things that people are trying to heal. It's a lot of society. It's a lot of what we think we're supposed to do to perform. And I'm the first to say, like, I think money is an amazing tool, and I hope you make the most of it working very little. That's what Jeff and I also want to talk about today. And there's a lot about, do you have to work hard to make money? Do you need to do this? But it's not that money is bad. I want to say that very clearly, but at what expense when does it not become worth it? Or what are you giving up in order to have it in the path that you're on? And are there other more creative ways to still make a great salary, but also to us as if you can hear, I think to Jeff and I, success is having time freedom. I would say time is maybe in a subset of our population now, but the world I feel like that I'm in, and Instagram and coaches and businesses and entrepreneurs and people, nomad life, thinking differently, like time freedom is the new success currency, I would say. And not everybody's fully there yet, but the point of having so much money typically is one, maybe you can buy things and have a great home or a boat or whatever you want, right? But also so that you have the freedom to choose how you spend your time, so that you can spend time with your kids, that you can go work out in the middle of the day or go to the beach in the middle of the day or whatever. So to me, time freedom. And I think from that also comes more, health is like the number one important thing, right? When that goes away, you have nothing. So, but I think time gives you more health. It gives you time to have slow mornings, to meditate in the morning, to work out, to be healthy, to spend time with your friends and your family or your kids or the people you love that ultimately make you more healthy. So that time, I think, indirectly impacts your health and your quality of life, which are the ultimate success as well, is relationships and health.
It's also going to impact your work too. Like if I were hiring an employee right now, I would say, hey, I want an amazing 3 hours out of you than a struggled 8 hours. And if that means you played pickleball this morning, if that's what gets you right, then yeah, those 3 hours are probably going to be worth more than those 8 hours. If I look back at it, you were talking about the long commute, same thing, had the long commute. When I think about it, I was leaving at, I think 5 a.m, getting back at 7 p.m. And I don't think I saw the sun for months through winter. I certainly didn't, because I'd leave when the sun was down and come back when it's down again, and didn't exercise, put on like 15 pounds or something. It's absolutely terrible. So yeah, there's so much to time, and how you use that time properly for yourself, like active recovery, mentally, physically, so that you can actually go back and do the stuff that you're super passionate about. Think about when you go and say, what is your cardio now? You used to do a jump rope? Do you still do something like that?
Pickleball at the moment.
Pickleball is your cardio. Yeah, that's great. So, when you come back to your computer after doing that versus when you haven't been active in a while, like, how does your brain feel?
So much better. I'm working that. I came from a morning of pickleball and I am on like a high. I am ready. I am active. But if you got me before that, I was like, I'm tired. I don't know. I can't think. So yeah, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
And not waking up at 5 a.m. Back in Costa Rica, I'm up at 5 a.m. because the sun is up and the birds are chirping. But I want to go. But I'm asleep. I'm asleep by like 8 p.m. here.
Yeah. It's still. I'm actually, my journey is still continuing. Yeah. You know how I've always been the morning person, getting up early. really not doing that anymore.
Whoa.
I mean, for me, my body wakes me up at 6:30 or so, but I'm not like on that. Who's the guy that's always talking about like crushing the morning and going by this super regimented? It's a podcaster, dude. I can't think of it. One of those
One of the
motivational
million
seize the
morning,
day,
what is it? Millionaire
$1 million
morning.
morning. You got to do all this shit. You got to go through this checklist of stuff. I was doing that for a while, and I'm like, God, that is so limiting. And it puts me into this box again of a different set of expectations of what success is. And I was like, if I don't go through my meditation, my run, and I'm up by 5:45, I shouldn't be proud of myself,
Oh.
and I'm not successful that way. So now I'm just like, you know what? I'll start whenever the fuck I want, because my productivity just I can't predict it, and doing these magic set of rules beforehand is not going to ensure the most productive day. So that's just kind of a continuation of like what the success means. Do you have to work at these hours? Do you have to work in the morning? Do you have to be at your computer at a specific time? That kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another little quote I want to say, and then I want to hop into the second part of your story, which is, I don't remember where I first heard this. It was a lot of years ago, and it really started to make me think differently, which is when we ask this question, like, what is success? And we're kind of, throwing out, is it time, is it energy, health? Someone once wrote the question, what if success was measured in how much you smiled each day? Like, it's an interesting question to ask, right? Because what would change? Would you not go after that same job you went after college with the person who's making $5 million or, famous doing X, Y, or Z, or waking up at 4:30 every day? Like, maybe they are smiling and maybe they love their life, and which is so great. Right. But, are you seeing friends that make you laugh? Are you playing pickleball and laughing? Are you swimming in the beach and smiling at the sunset, or whatever it is that you're doing? Right. So even just, it's kind of hard to, I feel like it's just like if you look at money, like making currency, like what if currency was just like smiles? And you're like, fuck off, because currency is dollars right now, right? So I get that it's kind of hard to say that exactly, but even if it just makes you think a little bit different, like, how did I feel today? Like, what if success was like my mental health? What if success was laughing with my friends and family and people that I care about? Like, if every day that was the measure, that's a really different life I would choose than is success working 15 hours a day and trying to make the most amount of money I possibly can. And again, I would hope that lots of money comes with my smiling life, but I don't want it at the expense of that. I think that's a big point too.
If you would have said these things to
I
me
really
10
would have been
years
like,
ago, I would have
stop.
immediately rolled my eyes, dismissed it as hippie shit, and been like, there's no way else. And there's probably a lot of people listening to this. They're going to do the same, and just, hopefully not. Hopefully it gets through a little bit, but I don't blame you. Like it's very hard to hear this kind of thing.
It is. And that's why
I recognize
yeah,
that.
it is. And that's why I want to continue to hit home that I really do believe you can make just as much money in these alternative lifestyles. So it doesn't have to be a trade-off of like, okay, you can go live your travel life, you can be free all day and you're going to be broke and make no money. Like, that's also not, I feel like the study was done so long ago. I want to say it was at Harvard that said you had to make 72,000 US dollars per year. And after that, like, it didn't change your happiness. I think now with inflation and then things have changed, let's say that's right. I don't know what the new number is. Call it 100,000, call it 120,000. I don't know. But there's a certain point at which, like, money really does matter, right? You need to have it to cover your basic needs, mortgage or rent or your healthcare and things like that. So we're not here to say it's not important. And like, we have goals to make a lot of money. But again, even as Jeff and I build out, Beach Commute, there's a lot of things we're asking of like, okay, we could do this in the short term and make more money, but doesn't mean we're going to have to sacrifice our time or our freedom or work in a way that doesn't feel good to us. And if so, that's not worth it. So how can we think more creatively and do something a little bit different to still say, we want all the time freedom. We still want the freedom and to work on the things we love. Like, we love this podcast. Like, it brings us joy, right? But
we got to talk about that, working on things that you like. Sorry, but
feel free to jump in. But I guess just to kind of wrap up that point where you're saying, if you're listening and you're like, okay, fuck off, success is not measured in smiles. Like, I need money, I'm going to live. What I will say to you is to me, the whole point of this conversation is how do you think, it gives me goosebumps. So that always means it's like my truth is, how do you think more creatively? And it might be a cut in the short term to say, I might take a little bit less money to start while I try something new, or while I live this new lifestyle, or while I start to travel, or maybe I'm going to sacrifice my efficiency for some cool travel experiences for a couple of years, or maybe not. But the point is, how can you think more creatively to say, I want to make just as much money or more? And I also want a great quality of life. I want the freedom to travel, to play a sport in the middle of the day, to spend time with my kids until they go to sleep, or whatever is important to you, and not to sacrifice one for the other. Not to say, I will work 800 hours a day until I turn 65 and retire, in which case something could happen to you before. Or again, that's like on that deathbed is, I wish I hadn't worked so much. So how can you think creatively to, maybe you'll take a pay cut in the short term, or maybe not, but make enough money and still be healthy, free to live the lifestyle. And again, I think that health is such a big one too, to be able to, there's so much of sleeping, X hours a night, getting quality sleep, having time for self-care, to work out, to cook food or buy food, or whatever you need to do for your health. And it doesn't mean you have to sacrifice money, but it shouldn't mean you sacrifice your health and life and joy just for money, I would say.
Yeah, and there's so much to that. I mean, none of this means anything if you don't have a mobile body. If you're not taking care of your body, who cares? Like if you do really well and you can't walk around the block without breathing hard, it's terrible. You've wasted it. Like, what are you gonna do with your physical body when your work is done? Nothing. It's gonna die on you. So that's a good point. I've got another note that I want to talk about with regards to work, but I want to save it. So maybe we go to the second part of the journey conversation.
Yeah. To talk us through your next step of this journey of time freedom and life freedom, and redefining what success means and meant to you.
It was two phases. The first was becoming a digital nomad, and then the second was becoming more of a, I guess, consultant, entrepreneur, or whatever the hell I am, not working for somebody else. And strangely enough, now that I look back on it, I think you would think that being a digital nomad would be the big step. That seems like, and it is, there's so much to it. You see so much of the world. It changes your mindset, opens your mind to different cultures, different people, different ways of thinking, the insane experiences that you get just on a day-to-day basis. It is an enormously life-changing thing. But it wasn't the big life-changing thing like going off on my own as a consultant was. I feel like that was even more significant in this pathway. But we'll get there. So the first step, becoming a digital nomad, I've told this story before, just went on a trial trip to Colombia while working for a company. And it was everything to me. It's like, oh my God, found camaraderie, adventure, everything that I wanted in life. And it's like, okay, that's it. This is digital nomad lifestyle. That's for me. There's just so much. The first half of that freedom conversation, it covers so much of that. Just knowing that the world's not as crazy big as you think it is. Like I'm here. Holy shit. This is the place far on that map. And I'm sitting here in a cafe and I'm actually working. It's just absolutely mind blowing. And I think that really changes your perspective on what you value as well. And I no longer thought in terms of titles. I didn't care about the title. And then also reflected on the money. You looked at you brought up the example of the threshold of how much you make, and then the incremental happiness you get beyond that, which doesn't exist. And I thought, yeah, I was making a lot more money than I've ever made. And I thought, I am no happier than I was when I was making half this amount of money. So I did that. I took half the money. I left the company, worked for myself, and happiness was increased with less money. Of course, I was above the threshold level. Like you mentioned, you have to cover all your essentials, or else you will not be happy if you're hungry. That's a fact. And like you said, I don't. We're not here to say money doesn't matter, because money does matter. We are about making money. But this is kind of a different conversation. Yeah. Anyway, so digital nomad path just kind of takes you down a new way of thinking about time and experiences, as your personal currency and how you value yourself when you look in the mirror. And then, becoming a consultant, which this isn't really a topic for everybody. It's not really the crux of a digital nomad podcast is, becoming a consultant entrepreneur or whatever. But that kind of, again, pushed me on a different pathway to start thinking about times some more, and like what a 9 to 5 job means, what productivity means, how you value your time and where you're going to use it really became a much bigger conversation with myself than becoming a digital nomad. Like it really was kind of a stepping stone. It's like, okay, I value friendships, travel, all these experiences. And now I'm really thinking about how do I want to spend each hour of my day? Because when you work for a company, that's already predetermined. You don't get to have that conversation. You don't even get to consider it. That time belongs to the company. Tough shit, But now, if you look at things in terms of, I want to talk about this a little bit more, all of these companies that are offering contract types of roles, like, and you see this with a lot of work from anywhere companies, like they are not exactly employees. They are employees, but they're not exactly employees. These companies want to hire talent from anywhere in the world, and they can't incorporate in every country where they hire people. So they'll just hire them as employees under contract. And a lot of times with that, these employees get to work flex hours. They work the hours that they want, and there's so many great opportunities for that. I don't want to really step on that just yet because I want to let you get to your part 2 of this as well. But yeah, so I'll just bury that for the moment.
I think it's I'll quickly tag on to that and then I can share because I think it is.
Keep talking. I have to let Charlie out.
Okay, perfect. So I think that actually is a perfect place just to jump in real quick, because if we look at the Anywhere Atlas, which is our database that we've put together for you of over 300 fully remote companies that let you work from anywhere. And we say this because the first part of working remote, yes, maybe your goal is eventually entrepreneurial freedom, but the fastest way to become a digital nomad, just to do it to start, is to get that income from a company that exists. But if you look at the Anywhere Atlas, we give each of those companies a score, an overall score from ratings. And what we love, and as Jeff was saying, as we look at those work from anywhere companies, the ones that have the best ratings are the ones that kind of have that asynchronous bit mixed in. They are thinking about, 1, work from anywhere in the world, and 2, work on your own time. Maybe we'll have to overlap for meetings or calls here and there, but you can really work on your own schedule, like get your work done, whatever time zone you're in, whenever you want. We'll share things on Slack, send Loom videos. We talked about some asynchronous tools in a podcast not long ago. But I think, again, not every company is there by any means. As we look at the companies on the Anywhere Atlas, it's a very small percentage of companies in the world, and it's our world. So it kind of feels like everything now. But I hope that, I do think companies will continue to move here, because as some companies are offering more asynchronous freedom, more contracting freedom, more freedom to work the hours that you want, other companies are going to have to catch up. So what we're looking at are those companies that are really ahead of the curve and value this. Like, they're baked in. If we think about even us at Beach Commute, right? We have people who work with us as well. And when I work with people, I just always want to say, like, work when you want. I can go be on any time zone. I don't, if we have to have a call or something, sure, we'll figure it out. But I feel like during my time at Pepsi and in the corporate world, I was so micromanaged and my time was so watched, and I had to be on a clock at a certain time, and I hated it so much. It felt so unfree that anyone who works with us, I'm like, please do this. I don't care if you do it at 3 a.m. or at 1 p.m, or if you, don't work until 4 p.m. If you like to, whatever you want to do, as long as you get it done. I'm not saying, be a bad employee or don't get your stuff done, but I don't care when you do it. Like, be free, go be free. Like, I think freedom is just so important. And we're starting to see these companies. And I think for Jeff and I, as we've kind of evolved throughout this too, it just became like that freedom. I feel like I wouldn't sacrifice it for anything, and there's different ways. And even if so, I guess I want to say, like, even if you're working as an employee at a company to start your nomad life, look for those companies, go to the Anywhere Atlas and find those organizations that can give you freedom, because it does exist. And I think that will be a trend that continues. And we'll link to Anywhere Atlas in the show notes as well. Anything else on this before I can kind of share the second part of my journey as well?
Oh, please. Take it off.
Okay. So for me, I also had this big identity shift of leaving the corporate world, kind of the same as Jeff had from leaving his company. But I know for me, I didn't think I cared about the prestige at all. Like, it's not why I went into the work that I did. I just was looking for a company that was fun and I wanted to move to New York. And I didn't realize when I got into that world of especially kind of New York, Los Angeles, and as Jeff mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, when anyone first meets you in the US, like, what do you do? And it was really easy when I was working for Pepsi. It's a globally known company that I could just say, oh, I do this. I work at this company, and everyone knew what it meant. I was working with like celebrities. It was cool. People enjoyed hearing about it. And I didn't even realize that I care. Like, it wasn't something that was top of mind while I was working there at all. I wasn't like, ooh, let me show off where I work. Like, it just was the job that I had and what I was doing, because I was looking for a job that I, thought I'd love. But what happened when I left it was really fascinating to me that I didn't anticipate. So for me, when I was working there, so I was working in New York, and I mentioned moved to LA, was then fully remote and sort of tapped into this new freedom. And I was like, okay, this is different. I'm not in an office, but I'm still kind of tethered to this company and set hours and responsibilities and all of that. I read Jeff always laugh. I read The 4 Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. It's a book that was written so long ago, but it was a lot of people sort of like foray into nomad life. And I was on a trip in Hawaii, grabbed this book in the airport. I almost never read books back then. And it just opened my mind to this guy who was, again, working, quote, 4 hours a week, but traveling the world while he did it. And all of a sudden, like, the bells went off in my head. I was like, wait a minute. Like, you're telling me someone could just work from their laptop. This was like way, probably back in 2014, I was reading this. So it was before, nomads were on social media. It was before anyone was talking about this really. But it just, something really clicked in there for me. And I was like, if he could do it, like, why can't I do that? And there's a lot of entrepreneurs in my family, but everyone still lived in their respective, states in the US. And it just had never occurred to me that, I was on such like a business school, corporate life, get promoted, that I just never thought I'd be someone who lived an alternative life. But I read this book and was like, I just want to travel. Like, I want to go to I want to go to Asia, and I want to go to Africa, and I want to go to all these beaches. And there's not enough time with my 2 weeks of vacation to get to these places. Like, I got to figure out another way. So for me, quitting my job came down to, I thought it was the only way that I could travel, that I could live that lifestyle. If I could rewind, I probably would have found a remote job and kind of started that way and like had the security of that, and then kind of built my way to maybe entrepreneurship at a later date. But I quit my job, started my own business for, 2 years. I moved back in with I left an engagement. I moved back in with my parents for like 6 months while I started a business. And it was hard. Like, I took so many steps backwards where I was living in another state. I had my own home. I was living with a fiance. Like, it just, I was in the corporate world, making a great salary. And suddenly I just took it all away. And the identity shift that came with that was really, really, really difficult for me. And I remember those first couple months, I remember everyone would ask me, like, if I met new people or ran into someone I hadn't seen in a while, they would say, like, what do you do? And I remember so specifically my answer, I would always say, well, I used to work for Pepsi. Like, right. That was a known thing.
You still stuck?
Yeah. And I couldn't say just like, oh, I do this now. Like, I started this like e-commerce dessert business, like a long story, but I started this business to start. And before it was making any money or before it felt prestigious, I had to go through this like big, big identity shift to be comfortable enough to say a job that people didn't know what it was, or I wasn't making a lot of money, or I was, didn't have this partner anymore. It was just like a lot of shifts all at once. And so what I will say, I know a lot of, if you're listening, maybe you're in that phase of, we have people who are lawyers and doctors, or, people who are in-person jobs who are saying, I want to travel, but it's like, that's been your identity for so long. And it's really hard for two parts to have that identity shift, and also to take a step down of maybe a salary or prestige or just something, education or a career you've had for a while. You might have to take a step down to then go forward. But as I look at, it's still hard to explain to people what I do. That hasn't changed. But now I'm proud of it and excited. And I love the lifestyle that I've created for myself. And to me, like, the freedom, if I look back at the last 8 years of living as a digital nomad, I've traveled to almost 80 countries. If I look at like the people I've met, the things I've learned, the cultures I've exposed myself to, the places that I've seen. And, like right now I'm living in Costa Rica for a month or two. And this used to be like my 1 week of vacation a year that I would like die for. And now it's just my life. And I still pinch myself every day. But what I will say is that it took a whole lot of hard times and I like shifting that identity of what is success. And so now if I meet someone who makes 10 times as much money as I do, but they're like in an office grinding and unhappy and unhealthy every day, like I think I'm in my own world, right? Like I'm more successful, and not that it matters. I don't care what anyone else is doing. I'm like holding it to myself. But what I'm trying to say is, or even if I look back at a past version of myself, right? Even if I had been making more money back then, I think I'm more successful now. And now I'm looking at a path to say, I feel like I've learned so much that I can make, even by traditional standards, can make more money living this way and still having all that freedom. But it takes a lot of courage to unwind your identity, to redefine success. And another little phrase I'll say, I remember when I first started my nomad journey, and I spent like 4 months in all over Southeast Asia. And I remember coming back and talking to my dad one time, and I've learned, my dad is a really great businessman. Like I've learned a ton from him. But I remember I was telling him that the calls in Asia were really hard. Like as I was working on my own business back then, I was like, sometimes it's 7 a.m. or midnight, you have to take calls. Or, if I was just back home, I could hop on a call with somebody that I couldn't do till, 2 days later because of time change or something. And I remember telling him, I was like, I think I was probably like 80% as effective, working in my business while I was there. And I remember saying, well, why don't you just stay home then so you can be 100% like effective in growing your business faster? Mm-hmm. And I remember like I thought about it for a second, and I said, I would any day take that 80% of, the financial success that I'm building right now and travel Asia for 4 months or live this nomadic life. So again, I think I didn't really even realize building up to it, but my values had shifted of what success is. And to me, then success was having the freedom to be able to work remotely in Asia for 4 months, or having the freedom to then go spend a month with my family if I wanted, or who lived in a different state than I lived when I was working in the corporate world, or whatever that looked like. So all of it to say, I think the theme that I'm seeing as we talk about this is the values that have shifted for us and redefining, not saying money doesn't matter. We love money. Money's great. We hope more money even flows than ever before, but not at the expense of freedom and time and health and energy and relationships. just those little things above it. So yeah.
Yeah, I want to add something else to that. You've said this before in sessions in the past with helping people get career clarity. I really like this technique that you use where you have people explore mentally things that they like to do, whether it has anything to do with a job or not. Just brainstorming things that you enjoy working on. And this has a lot to do with the time conversation too. How do you want to spend your time? Do you want to spend your time earning money the majority of your day, in some cases, working on things that you don't particularly enjoy doing? Or do you want to work on something that doesn't feel like work, something that you are passionate about? Like when you sit down at the laptop, you're like, I can't get these ideas out fast enough. This is just burning a hole in me. And I hope I don't miss anything that I want to talk about when I'm writing about this, or investigating something if you're into analytics or something like that. That's also a huge aspect too that I've been discovering recently as like a continuation of the how do I want to spend my time? Well, yeah, I want to spend it traveling, and I want to spend it, building strong relationships. And like you just talked about in Asia, well, I could be more effective at home. I could also be more effective if I work 16 hours a day in a box, maybe, but I don't want to do that. I don't just want to have these experiences. I also want to be spending my time on something that I'm really, really interested in. And it is kind of a luxury saying that from my standpoint, but it's also not, because there was a lot that got to the point where I'm able to work on the things that I'm interested in, and a lot of like inner work and soul searching, and going through periods of time where I was not working on things that I remotely liked. Actually, I would get anxiety just thinking about opening up my laptop. It was just like trapping. It was just so tense, the idea of opening laptop and working on something I didn't want to work on. And, it went like this for years. And now working on Beach Commute, it's like, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's a new dragon to slay. There's new bad guys. There's new hope for people, and sharing something that's so core to me. That's really exciting. I didn't want to go down my personal path too much on this one, but there's so much to say for finding the work that's really, really interesting to you. And that might not be in the form of a 9-to-5 career. It could be you take some part-time consulting gig or something, or you just work as a freelancer on something that's kind of interesting. And it might set you off on this crazy path where you end up like starting your own business on it, Anyways, I don't know how I got on that rant, but it was very inspiring hearing that. Yeah, hearing that story.
Oh, yeah, it's a good thank you in that. But to add on to what you're saying of, I think now transitioning back to work, I think it's easy to listen to this conversation and say, well, the goal is to get so free that you never have to work, or I'll just like go off and live in a little commune and not do anything ever, or sit on a beach and, read a book for the rest of my life. What's interesting is, I remember this in the 4-hour work week, the whole premise was that he actually got so much time and freedom that he was like, wanted to work. He was like, how do I spend my time? Like, let me learn Muay Thai in Thailand, or like he had to find ways to fill his time. There's actually an interesting thing that happens, right? When you are working so hard and doing, in a life, working on things that you don't like, the whole goal is to escape it, right? You're like, let me go on vacation. Let me go sit at an all-inclusive and drink my sadness away on a beach to try to feel better before I go back, right? But what interestingly happens is, like, if you have that time freedom, and money gives you that time freedom often, right? To be able to have the luxury to work on what you like, most people come to the realization that you like, I don't know why we're created this way as humans. I got a lot of questions about that, and that's for a podcast for another day. But like, we inherently want to create, we want to learn, we want to work, but if it's things that are meaningful, as Jeff said. So yeah, the two of us, like, I also love Beach Commute. I love everything about this business that we're doing. Like, it, of course there's days where it's like, okay, there's like little things I have to do, or, administrative stuff. And I'm like, I really don't want to do this today. But as a whole, I love this work. And so it's meaningful to me and it's exciting to me. And actually, as I travel, I think work actually keeps me grounded. If I just went off and like, if you just go backpack the world or just travel, actually adventurously travel for a year on end, it is exhausting. And to me, actually having Beach Commute and this work as kind of like a grounding thing that I love, actually, like, I love filling some of my days. And some days I want to take off and explore or travel or wherever, but it's gotten to a point where, yeah, Jeff and I worked up the ladder. And by the way, that was so far from where I was in my corporate life. And it took a lot of trial and error along the way. And that's why I started career coaching, because it took me so long to kind of figure that out. And as Jeff said, it also, you might start something and that opens a path. Like, if you think about the career that Jeff and I are doing now with Beach Commute, one, I'm doing career coaching for people, and two, specifically to help you live a digital nomad life, or at least have the freedom to travel. If I rewind to Pepsi days, I'd only had one career, one bit. So how could I help anyone? I didn't have enough life experience to go through different careers to even figure that out and help people. And two, I hadn't traveled in this way. So it took like taking steps and doing different businesses and starting to travel the world that this ended up happening. And so sometimes it just takes, like, you take a leap and you try something new and you do the next best thing, and it unfolds in ways that maybe you never could have imagined. But with that freedom, and just as it relates to work and getting that job, I remember when I was thinking about leaving Pepsi before I decided to start a business, I was having like a crisis. I had taken a 2-month sabbatical. I traveled to like 5 or maybe like 7 different countries or something, came back to LA to start.
It's a quarter life crisis.
Oh, I had a major, I think I was exactly 25 years old. And I was like, I cannot go back to this corporate. Even if I was working remotely, I was like, I cannot go back. And I did for 2 more years. But the point was, I remember having this conversation with my mom one day and saying, like, people say this phrase, like, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And she was like, Marissa, work is called work for a reason. And I was like, well, which one is it? Like, I just didn't know. And I think the conclusion that I've come to is you find work that you hopefully love, and there's always going to be little parts of work that you might not enjoy or that you have to do, but as a whole, the closer you can get to finding work that, like, a mission that excites you, the work you're doing within that mission excites you. And that's my specialty. And maybe we could link also, there's a career clarity masterclass that I teach that really, we just did a live version of it recently. And someone actually emailed us, I don't know if you saw, Jeff, a week after taking that course. She like identified the new thing through this and already has a new thing that she started and has a contract she like signed yesterday. So it really can change your life. So I think I want to say it's beachcommute.com/clarity, I believe, but we'll link it in the show notes. If that's something you're interested in, it can really change your life. It's one of my greatest passions is helping you figure that out. But all of that to say, I think, as humans, we need meaning. We want to work, but the goal is, how do you find something that you can make great money while not, burning out, and hopefully doing something that you love. So we'll add another value to the system along with like the time and energy and health and freedom. Hopefully there's meaning in the work that you do. And it might be, I work with a lot of clients who, are saying like, they might be able to you might be able to identify like, I know what I want to do. I don't know how to make money doing that yet. And you might need to take I call them like a bridge job, where maybe you do something you like a little bit more and you're making good enough money and you can start that other thing, whether you're starting your own business or doing a project on the side for free. So you have some experience and someone can hire you doing that thing. But there's so many people who get stuck in careers. Maybe this is you if you're listening, where maybe you're getting paid really well and maybe you've been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years, but you don't love it. But like you've built this life and the salary and the thought of leaving.
You're too far in. You feel locked.
But it's not too late. And I always say, you're not starting over, you're starting from experience. But I think it's really important whenever I coach people, everyone has different values of what's important, right? Some people don't care about traveling the world and so be it for them, but they'd rather, have more freedom in X, Y, or Z way. But if you're listening to this, you probably want the freedom to travel. You probably want to have a career that feels somewhat meaningful and have this freedom. So I would offer like, you can do it, and think through to yourself. Like I like to write down an order, like what is the most important to you? Is having the freedom to travel more important than making, $200,000? Maybe you have something you can do $150,000 and gives you the freedom to travel. And think through, is that, I think we're so trained, if you think back to the beginning of this conversation, to say, like, you'd be an insane person to take a $50,000 pay cut, but like, think about what comes with that, right? And one more kind of tangible example I'll give is, I think I've said this on the podcast before, but when I was in Sri Lanka, I met this Israeli girl. She was a friend of a friend, and her company had given her 2-week permission to go like work remotely from Sri Lanka, but that was it, like 2 weeks. And then she had to come back to the office, and she loved it there. Like she was loving the travel life, meeting all sorts of digital nomads, like waking up on the beach in Sri Lanka, which is a magical place and country. And my friend was like, you have to talk to her, Marisa. I'm like the career whisperer. And I remember I said like, well, do you like your job? Do you like your company? I thought she was going to say no, but she was like, I love what I do and I love this company. And I said, is it more important to you? Like, do you love it more than you love being here right now? And she was just like, like mouth drop, right? So sometimes you need someone to ask you those hard questions of like, really think through, like, for that girl there, I would say, like, is there another company or similar job or company you could find that also gives you this freedom that you, maybe even if you like it 20% less, do you love your lifestyle 20% more that it gives you? So just to start thinking through, like, success isn't what I say, I guess, back to the title of this episode is, success isn't only your salary. There's a lot of other things to take into account. And I hope this inspires you to say you can make just as much money, but think about, I always say as a coach, and even as, as we build Beach Commute, our business, like think about the end in mind. Like, what do you want your lifestyle to look like? And then back into your career. How do you build something around that? Because as I was thinking about things I wanted to do, there was a lot I could have done that involved being in person or having to have an in-person thing. But to me, that number one thing was, I want the freedom to travel, and nothing I could do would be more important than having that freedom. And how can I then creatively build the rest around that?
It's interesting. I want to relate this back to, I spend so much time on LinkedIn, unfortunately. There are a lot of people probably identify with this. struggling with either in one or two positions right now. One, they're locked in their job and the hiring market is so bad right now. People are just really struggling to get hired that they are very reluctant to make any change because like, oh my God, the waters are so choppy out there. There's no way. There's no way I'm dipping my foot in the water. So they're hanging on with what they've got. They're like, okay, this is the comfort is better than the alternative of taking the leap. And then you've got the other side where people have been looking for jobs for a long time and struggling to get calls back. And I would recommend, I'm actually going to link the podcast in the show notes. So the one that you talk about, more effective ways to get hired. But we've got people generally from what I'm seeing in the market right now in one of those two camps. And I think you covered the first one pretty well. The people that are just kind of comfortable, but not really reflecting on, is this good? Is this a good thing at all? And for them, I would recommend just think to yourself right now in the last year, 2 years, what are the most impactful memories / moments you've had? And I bet you 9 times out of 10, somebody's going to say vacation. It's not going to be anything related to, it could be having a kid, sure, some big life moment. But I'd say a lot of times it's going to have to do with either being with a group of people or having some sort of experience outside the norm, right? So weigh that into your consideration when you're thinking about if this is a good thing for you. For the people that are looking to make the transition and struggling to get the right job, consulting gig, or whatever, what could we say to them now that could be helpful? I do want to link to that podcast for sure, because it's you give some very good recommendations on more effective ways to get hired rather than the current everybody's just spraying and praying and not hearing back from people. But is there anything else that we could say to these people that might be one step behind? Like, I'm not even working at all at the moment.
Yeah. So you're talking about hiring tips or like the mindset behind it?
Probably like the mindset.
Yeah. So what I would say, this is where like that bridge comes in, but I would say, I guess it's one thing if you said like someone who's unemployed versus if you have a job, let's just say right now you have some sort of job, but you're looking for something new. It is a tough hiring market right now. It's hard to find. You don't have to leave your job immediately. This, when you listen to this podcast, it doesn't mean today put in your 2 weeks notice and just like quit and leave and move to like Timbuktu, right? But what I will say is start committing to yourself to put the time in to start this search. And Jeff will link to the podcast. I think we probably give a lot more detail in it, but there's something that says like 80% of jobs are usually found through weak ties. So ask a friend of a friend, like go on LinkedIn and talk to people you used to work with, see where other people are working. And anyway, what I would say is it doesn't mean you have to give up your job today. Some people like to just like quit and then like take the leap and figure it out. I would say 90% of the clients that I work with will say like, I'm keeping my job, and when I get that new thing, then I will release this and go. But it's easy to just be comfortable and not really, but like you're tired after work and you're already in a job you don't like, and the last thing you want to do is spend 2 hours in your day
More
on
work.
LinkedIn
Yeah.
and messaging people
Stressful.
and setting up calls to chat and catch up and have those virtual coffee chats or get to meet people at new companies. But like that is what it takes. So to me, again, it's that short term. Think about it as a couple of months that are going to be more time doing this that you're not going to love. But the result is that you can find a job that then you can let go of the thing you don't like and have a better quality of life with the new one you're going after. So I would say get really clear on what it is that you want. Make yourself really easy to help. What I see is a lot of people are like, I could do this, I could do that. I'll, imagine you are talking to Jeff and I'm like, hey, Jeff, like I'm looking for a new job. And he's like, well, what are you? Okay, I know people. What are you looking for? And I'm like, I don't know. I'll do anything. And he's like, okay, like, what's he going to go do? Versus if I said like, hey, Jeff, I am really excited. I don't have so much experience, but I've got a little bit. I'm transitioning. I want to be a project manager. And I really love companies that have something to do with animals, like pets or wildlife or something like that. So then Jeff can start spinning his wheels and say, oh, I know someone who works at this animal company or who works in project management. And so when you're easier to help, the people can connect you to the right people. So it might not be someone exactly in your network, but that person can connect you to someone that they know. So I would say start looking, put in the work. Don't feel defeated. It's going to take more time. You're not going to want to do it, but do it. And be really crystal clear on what it is that you want so that when you talk to people, they can actually help and get you in the right place. And a lot of times it's just someone knows someone who knows a role, and that's how you often kind of get your foot in the door.
Yeah, and maybe don't shy away from these part-time contract roles where you're not exactly an employee. There's a lot of good that goes with that. From what I'm seeing, one of the biggest positives is right now we're seeing these very long, protracted hiring processes. 8 steps, 2 months, 6 interviews with 8 different panels. With contractor roles, companies don't assume as much risk because they're not taking on nearly as many benefits. If they have to let you go, there's like no legal ramifications. They don't have to onboard you. You're a specialist coming in with a very surgical, very low risk. So they hire people a lot faster, and there's a lot of these roles, and you get a lot of flexibilities to explore some of the things that we talked about today, whether it's travel, whether it's restructuring your time. Like these contractor roles, freelancer roles allow you to kind of do things a little bit more the way that you want to do them and start to explore some of these thoughts. So I would keep that in consideration when you're searching some of these job boards, and I'll make a note to see if I can dig up some more of these and share these on a regular basis, because I think there's a lot to be said for that at the moment.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that helps. Any last words about this topic in general? It's a big esoteric topic that we wanted to cover. We hope that you enjoyed it and got something valuable. I'd love to know if you ever want to write in at hello@beachcommute.com. Let us know if this resonated with you, if the cogs are turning a little differently in your head now, you're maybe redefining success and what you want. Anything you want to add, Jeff?
So yeah, it's a little bit risky for us to do this kind of topic because it's a little bit, I don't know, it's esoteric. Yeah, it's a little less practical. Do this kind of thing. It's not a locations podcast, but we did feel like it was really important to talk about because, like, as you go through this, you're going to encounter these things, and it's good to at least start thinking about these things now. So I had a lot of fun with it. Please do write in, tell us if this was useful for you, or if you're in the first camp where I was like, this is some hippie crazy shit. No way. Money's important. Title's important. That's fine. I mean, I was there. I totally
We do get it.
I would love to hear people's opinion on this.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And we get it because we've been there as well. And I would say, we want all of it to happen, but just kind of looking at what's most important. So if you're not already on our email list, check out beachcommute.com/email. We send out a lot of remote job listings, different opportunities, lots of tips to become a digital nomad, travel tips, and help you to make this transition. You'll get updates on podcasts as well. And if you haven't already done so, if you can leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening, Jeff and I will record the famous ayahuasca podcast episode that we have been talking about when we reach either 100 on reviews on Spotify or on Apple.
We're at 91 now.
Okay, it's coming. So if you're listening.
We had 2 come in the last 2 days. All right. Thank you. We're getting there.
Perfect. So if you're wanting to hear it, it's a fun story. Definitely more into esoteric land as well, but also just fun travel stories and a fun journey. So yeah, give a 5-star review if you haven't done that. And other than that, we hope that you're thinking differently. You're thinking about freedom and health and your overall life, and how can your work and money fit into that. I would say that's my takeaway. And otherwise, we will see you next week.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.